you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling-up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's eckfeldt.com/thrive.
Hey everyone, Bruce Eckfeldt here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so we can let you know when the next video is posted. You can also check us out at eckfeldt.com for more great content. With that, let's go check out the video.
You're listening to Thinking Outside the Bud, where we speak with entrepreneurs, investors, thought leaders, researchers, advocates, and policymakers who are finding new and exciting ways for cannabis to positively impact business, society, and culture. And now, here is your host, business coach, Bruce Eckfeldt.
Welcome, everyone. This is Thinking Outside the Bud. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And today we're here with David Champion. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bruce. Great to be on.
And David is co-founder and CPO at Baker Technologies. So, David, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. But before we talk about the business, I would love to get a sense of just your professional background. How did you get kind of into the cannabis space, just so we have a little bit of context and a sense of who you are and what the history was like?
Absolutely. I entered the cannabis space about 4 years ago, 2014. My co-founders and I, Joel and Roger, were in New York, and we'd been working on previous technology startups. Joel and I had been doing some consulting with technology startups and founders. And when we heard about the opportunity in Colorado at the time, dispensaries starting to do huge business, but really having no technology systems available to them to operate in the same way that other retailers are used to being able to operate in this day and age, we saw an opportunity. We saw the opportunity to build something that could allow customers to order online and dispensaries to display their products online. And really, it was more of a reserve ahead product. So we wanted to bring that convenience and ease to the market, which was otherwise seeing this sort of stigmatized way of purchasing cannabis that was not helpful for the legalization and reform.
I know you have a background in product development and kind of really looking at sort of what does that experience look like for the users. Where did you see, I guess, what did you see as kind of the challenges when approaching the cannabis space, or what kind of drove you to looking specifically at cannabis in that, given all the different things that you could develop products for or develop experiences for, why this space?
I think to answer that, I'll backtrack a little further before 2014. So I was trained as an architect and worked briefly in New York as an architect with Daniel Libeskind. And the training that I received was quite different than I think the way that a lot of architecture schools offer young budding architects their perspective of that field. I was trained to look at a building and think of a building as a space that I think moves people into a new emotional state, alters the way people physically move or walk through the building, alters the conversations they have and even the style of conversations. And that training, for example, in an architecture space would be using materiality and physical form and height and dimension, as well as the lighting and acoustic qualities. I was very interested by how that same philosophy could be transferred into the space of the digital. So on a screen, just in the same way, UX and UI designers are building an experience for people. It's not just about how nice something looks. It's about how does it make them respond to information? How does it make them communicate with their friends? How does it inform new, productive, helpful ways of being in the world? And the cannabis industry entered this sphere, and I realized that the stigma around purchasing a product that's ultimately a naturally derived plant that can offer significant benefits to human beings, that was being undermined by the general sense of this sort of underground, the hungover from prohibition sense that buying cannabis was taboo, that if a mother of young children was to be seen buying medicine from a dispensary by her neighbors, that would be frowned upon. The inconvenience of waiting in long lines to receive the available education around what to buy. And I wanted to bring the opportunities of software, of screen technology, to really help create more transparency, and also through the branding itself and how that transferred into the UI, make this feel like a product that's being purchased above board. It's safe, it's identifiable, it's no longer sort of the green text on black backgrounds websites that we used to see 10 years ago. It's something that has the professionalism of the modern UI standards and user experience expectations.
Yeah. And so this was 3 or 4 years ago now? I want to get the times right. Yeah. So we're still pretty thick in the cannabis leaf background websites and things like that. I mean, it was pretty rudimentary branding. Tell me a little bit about how the business sort of started. Like, what was the first move of the business? Did you focus on the technology? Did you focus on getting some customers? Like, how did that really kind of kickstart in terms of the business itself?
We were very lucky to have failed several times. Joel and I had been working on multiple startups since we were quite young and had at that time about 6 years of experience in making all the mistakes, and as also consulting with startup founders. And I think when you're removed, you're not in the business, you're able to observe from it as an outsider. You can spot those kind of challenges and mistakes and perhaps approaches that a lot of founders feel like we should approach a business with that are not really the most helpful. So one clear example is the model of the MVP, minimum viable product. And with that experience and with that knowledge, we teamed up with Roger, who also had, he has 20 years of experience in technology, and he had one of his own startups before. So as the three of us, Joel was handling the business communications and sales side, Roger back-end software data, and I was handling the front end and product and the branding side. So Roger and I got together to discuss what this first version of our online product should be. And in 5 weeks, we had a minimum viable product available. We released it to 2 dispensaries in Denver, and we had our proof of concept. They liked it. They were receiving more orders. We were getting feedback from customers that this was an experience that was better than what we're used to. And so we saw that as our proof that we were onto something, and we carried on building from there. And then I also should say that pace isn't always the goal, right? When you're getting out of the gate, you want to save on resources, save money, save time, learn what works and what doesn't as quickly and cheaply as possible. But once we learned some of those indicators, we also took the time, about a 6-month period into 2015, where we really thought carefully through how this technology was solving the problem. And then it wasn't about rapid development. It was about iteration and observation and learning from our process.
Yeah, I think you bring up 2 good points. I think a lot of people look at successful companies, people that have built successful companies, and they think they kind of woke up one morning for an idea of a company, and by the afternoon they had revenues coming in. And I think the fact that you've gone through several different startups, some of which weren't as successful, is good to kind of recognize, and good for people to know, is that it oftentimes the success that you see in a later stage company is because of the failures of previous companies or earlier stages. I'd love the idea of being iterative around this. I mean, coming out of the agile world myself, I think it's applying that kind of philosophy of iterating, getting feedback, developing insight, trial and error, experimenting in kind of smart ways around, increasing your learning velocity about this stuff is key. What were the big questions for you in these early stages? So you found 2 dispensaries to use your MVP, early version product. What were the things that you were uncertain about that you learned quickly once you had people kind of using the product and interacting with it from a interface point of view?
One big one was this paradigm of B2C versus B2B. We were looking at case studies and references in the form of Yelp and OpenTable and Grubhub and Seamless, and we were seeing the similarities in our mission. Those companies are very B2C focused. As an end consumer, you receive a lot of marketing, you receive a lot of push from those companies to engage with their software. And that was actually how we started out of the gates. We wanted to create this system that a cannabis consumer, a cannabis patient would want to engage with, so that they could take advantage of a more convenient experience and essentially become a marketplace that would allow consumers to find the right dispensaries, find the products they desired, and education across different dispensaries. And then we learned that doesn't work in this particular industry. And it is interesting because it works in other industries very well. And it was a big lesson for us in 2015 to recognize that dispensaries are very, very proud of their individual product. You could say the same about restaurants, but I would argue that to a greater degree, dispensaries believe that their strain of a certain product is the best, and rightly so. They put a lot of work into either growing it or sourcing it, and making sure that they are selling the highest quality cannabis they can. And so that idea of being in a marketplace where a customer could shop with them or easily move to a competitor was not something that was attractive, and it wasn't helping us gain sales and grow as a company and offer this product to the market.
Yeah.
So what we did in 2015 was to switch that paradigm, and we became solely a B2B company, and we decided that we would act as the best friend to the dispensary, the sort of back of house, all the systems and software that they would need that the customer may not even know existed to allow the dispensary to succeed as a business, to grow, and to sort of join the rest of the world in the larger industry spaces as an official, legitimate retail operation. And that, in fact, has happened since then. It's been great to watch.
Yeah, I think it's an important kind of lesson to learn or thing to realize that oftentimes when you first approach the market, you've got a particular business model or a particular positioning relative to the market that once you get in there, the reality of the situation tells you that it's not necessarily the best idea. And the faster you can kind of move and pivot around that, is really where the innovation comes. So once you, I guess, had your initial product, you had some traction, you had some customers going. Tell me about the growth process. Like, what were the kind of the challenges that you started to run into as you had sort of product success? What kind of things happened from the business, either in terms of, technology, people? Kind of curious how you've managed to navigate some of the legislation kind of nuances and details as things have happened in the various states. I'm not sure if those are big problems for you or not, but I'm curious to get some of the insight.
Legislation is definitely important. I wouldn't say we've faced major challenges with legislation. We haven't hit any major roadblocks, but we had to enter that very responsibly because ultimately the dispensaries were relying on us to make sure that their customers weren't reserving product illegally or, exceeding, for example, the ordering limits on a specific purchase or ordering the product that they don't have access to in medical markets, for example. And so there was a lot of responsibility for us to build our technology, not only to cater to Colorado, where we initially started, but also to prepare ourselves for the expansion through many states. We're in 24 or so states now, and we also operate in Canada. We also have discussions with other countries, Puerto Rico and Jamaica specifically, about using our software in those countries. And one of the ways we were able to scale quickly, despite the very, very different regulatory demands of different territories, was by building a business rules engine. This was an idea of Roger's originally. We built a business rules engine that allowed us to plug in all of those major attributes per state. And when we grew to new states, we could just plug in those numbers in one sort of sheet, one place within the code base, and not spend months having to iterate our platform to make it ready for new territories. So that was a challenge, but one I'm proud to say that we approached perspicaciously. And I think that the bigger challenge for businesses starting in 2014, 2015 was also funding. It definitely wasn't easy then, and it's still much more limited in scope for investor and other capital availability than most other industries. That has to do with multiple factors, including the limited partner agreements that a lot of funds are contained by. And we had some struggles with fundraising, and it just took longer than we were used to from our previous businesses. But we got there in the end, and one huge benefit to us was joining 500 Startups, the accelerator program in San Francisco. And that happened at just such a key time. And we were about to hit this inflection point as a business, but we needed the extra guidance, the extra support, and the financing as well. And it was just this wonderful sweet spot that we entered that 4-month program, and when we came out, we were much better off as a business. Sometimes being lucky is the best thing. Time can make such the difference. A week too late, and it can be a dramatically different outcome. I guess as you've kind of been in this industry and you've kind of developed this technology, you've worked with the dispensaries. What have you kind of learned about the business or learned about the cannabis industry in terms of the dynamics, in terms of, how is it similar or different than other industries that you've worked in before? What are some of the insights you can give us as an overall kind of market? I'm happy to say that it's becoming more and more similar in all the ways that we were hoping for several years ago. The intelligence of the operators who now want to use data to inform their marketing. They want to use intelligent dashboard systems to make sure that they're offering the best quality product and also giving their customers and patients the best possible experience. We're seeing a lot of cleanup in the gray areas of the market, whereas before, as you know, especially in California, there were for 10 or 15 years operators selling cannabis in the gray market. And in a way that paved a path for this to happen, what's happening today with much more globally accepted deregulation or re-regulation. I think that the major shifts in business savviness, in software platforms available, as well as logistics platforms available to the industry are all positive shifts. In general, the way that consumers are responding to the product is also with a greater expectation of education. More and more consumers and patients are aware that there is still poor quality cannabis on the market, on both the black market and the white market, that they should be more diligent about making sure that the products, the strains that they're purchasing were not grown in environments where there might have been mold or other toxicity. And all of that is positive because the fewer incidents of negative or less than positive or even just substandard experiences that people are getting from this medicine is going to sort of, again, lead the way towards the industry legitimizing and becoming globally expanded.
Yeah, I certainly have had many conversations about how this market is going to change pretty dramatically once we move from the kind of traditional cannabis users that are just kind of going from the black and gray market to white market activities or purchases to starting to open up to general population. I mean, there's a whole huge world out there of people that have not used cannabis that are now potential markets, and I think approaching them and helping them understand the products, educating them, understanding the uses, finding, not only the effects, but how does it fit into different types of lifestyles and stuff. I mean, I've seen people doing, coconut waters and, all sorts of new products where they're taking, the raw cannabis and finding just different uses for it that is not just kind of continuation of the historic cannabis, but just brand new uses. What do you think are some of the challenges that companies are going to go through as that happens? Like as you see this market kind of opening up to new segments, what do you think people need to be aware of or the challenges they're going to face?
Well, one aspect is that we're starting to see this year pharmaceutical companies enter the industry. And I believe the first pharmaceutical CBD product was released just recently this month. And that's interesting because it obviously brings a certain legitimacy to cannabis and to CBD specifically. It's also something that maybe with larger operators in the industry, there will be less sense of control or sense of feedback loops into the quality of education that's coming with who's receiving those products. And so I think it's the responsibility of the operators in the cannabis industry specifically to maintain that expectation, that standard, to let the audience, the customers and patients know that that information can be available and that they should be demanding it before they choose any product that isn't well branded with that information and transparency available. That's one aspect. And it's interesting seeing the new technology advancements coming out. There's a group called Molecular Testing Labs, I believe they're in Oregon, that is providing a saliva test swab kit that allows any consumer to take a personal home saliva test, send that back in a prepackaged envelope, and receive a full report on their specific endocannabinoid system and how their body specifically metabolizes these products. And so that can help consumers learn what products they should be shopping for if they are looking for certain effects like better sleep or reduced anxiety, pain management, that kind of thing. And the list of those types of benefits is just going to continue growing as the science becomes more and more well established.
Yeah, I think that whole idea of kind of customized medicine or customized cannabis, everyone's profile is different. You're gonna metabolize it differently, and therefore, if you tend towards certain types of products or certain types of strains or certain types of applications, is a fascinating one because I think that's a lot of what I think what a lot of people struggle with is the purchase process, the actual product kind of interaction process is challenging right now. Going into a dispensary and figuring out, okay, well, I don't even know what to ask for. I don't know what to tell. I'm not sure exactly how I should be navigating these things is probably one of the hardest parts of this industry right now. And as that matures, I think you'll see more sophisticated versions of that and even just whole segments. I mean, I think, from a branding point of view, there's great opportunities for just developing brands around these different segments that are just saying, look, we're just focused on this type of person looking for this kind of engagement with the product.
Yes. To sort of respond to your earlier question about what's changing or how does this industry seem to be set apart from many other industries. Yeah. Also, the fact that there isn't as much of a legacy of the infrastructure and I would say the inertia of other industries. It's all brand new, fresh-faced, and really being created as we speak. That gives an opportunity for, as innovators in the industry, to develop systems in the way that they should be developed, as opposed to based on sort of responses to what the market has become accustomed to over the last, say, 100 years.
Yeah.
You look at the alcohol industry, the consumer is very, very entrenched in how you purchase alcohol, the way you get marketed about it, the choices that you make, where you make them. Online ordering for alcohol still has never really taken off, even though there are some great technologies for doing that.
Yep.
People still expect that they're going to walk into the local liquor store or wine store and make those decisions. They expect that they're going to have a certain type of conversation with their friends or with even the experts about that. And I think because there isn't that preset paradigm for most consumers in this industry, bearing in mind that the people that are purchasing cannabis legally now, many of them are coming to cannabis new. They're newly educated about the benefits cannabis can offer. And so we have a responsibility, again, as well as an opportunity to create that new paradigm for the systems in place. And like I say, there's a fresh canvas. We can build it however we think is best for the market.
Yeah. It's it's a QWERTY keyboard problem, right? I mean, we're still typing on these ancient keyboards because of an old issue that we have long since solved, but yet we can't get out of it because of the standards. We don't have that issue here in cannabis. We can set new ground. The other thing I find that's interesting, I don't know if you've noticed this, but just because of the regulation side of it and the whole kind of conundrum with the state versus federal, is that it means that a lot of players that otherwise might be very quick to go in and establish themselves in the space are not doing it because they don't want to touch it for various, they don't want to taint other business lines or other businesses that they're in, which creates an interesting space for being able to really innovate in these areas that are kind of, it's open season, it's an open field. And I've seen a lot of companies come in and really create interesting solutions for the cannabis space because other companies don't want to come in that have potentially existing products or extensible products in the space haven't done it. And that's an interesting one that I've seen, and it's curious to see people come into that market and take advantage of that. I don't know if you've noticed companies doing that, but it's one that I've picked up.
Definitely. I would say we're in that boat. Yeah. I mean, many of the systems we've created are very, very innovative, I would say. They are specific to the industry. There are so many specificities to how cannabis is sold, the pricing models for it, the regulatory restrictions per state and even county, many of the other aspects to how a consumer interacts with this marketplace. So I wouldn't say that any other, say, e-commerce or loyalty or marketing messaging company could have just landed in the cannabis industry. The same goes for point of sale systems specifically. Yeah. But that said, I think many of them would have made those amendments to their technology and moved into the industry much sooner than now if they had been able to. And the fact that they haven't been able to has allowed for many other entrepreneurs and innovators to come into this industry with a head start. And that will, I'm sure, change in the next, who can guess how many years, but it will change. But it's very, very interesting that, again, going back to the idea of not having inertia or preset expectations behind the innovation in this industry, most companies that would have been who are already operating in other industries and are large, who would have moved into the cannabis industry, would have had a preset precognition about what was to be offered to this market. And because we as entrepreneurs have come in without that pre-configuration, I would say we've been able to very much cater to exactly how the operators in cannabis want to deal with their technology.
Yeah, it's a great kind of situation to be in as an entrepreneur and having that blank slate or at least a clear field to start developing and playing in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of where you see the market going. And I know that you've got an announcement for Baker. So why don't we talk a little bit about that in the context of how you see kind of business playing out? Because I think we're at least in the beginnings of kind of, I think, the next phase of the industry. We've got a lot of different players in there in different areas that are developing great products. But as the market expands, those things are going to have to kind of get put together in different ways. Tell us what's going on with Baker. And I know you can talk about some of it and not about others, but let's do it in the sense of, where some of these companies, I think, are kind of going and what kind of business activity I think we're going to see in the coming years in the cannabis space.
Yes, well, I'm excited that we've recently announced a merger between Baker and 3 other companies. We have, I think, made a really, really powerful combination of businesses that allows us to broaden our scope beyond the retail space and through the entire industry ecosystem. Yeah. We now have access to the data as well as to the operational expertise and the capital that comes along with now building our business through the cultivation, the processing and producing and retail spaces, as well as, again, technology bringing the types of insights and the type of understanding of what's working and what's not working that can make for a really powerful combination and ultimately bring bigger insights, more helpful insights to the industry. So as Baker, we continue to build the best quality products in technology that we can for our dispensary clients. And by being more aware of what's working and what's really making an impact for the industry, we can do a much better job, much more educated job of building those products for the industry.
Yeah, I think that sort of vertical integration makes a lot of sense, especially at this point in the market where there's so much advantage to having insight and communication from seed all the way to use. That being able to really know what's happening at each stage and be able to develop insight and strategy around that, I think it's a good strategic move. So I'll be curious to see how things play out for you. And I guess what do you anticipate in terms of, I guess, where you see that kind of market going? Would you expect that more companies look at this kind of partnership, integration, consolidation, either across geographic or from a production point of view? What do you see as being kind of the likely dynamics in the industry?
I do see consolidation coming, and I think a large component of that is that much larger funds and financing are entering the industry now that legitimization has been established. The opportunity for both large and small companies to essentially just do a better job of what they are offering is now available with that capitalization and with the types of consolidation that I think accelerate the movement of different operators in different parts of the ecosystem to spread more quickly throughout the States and even globally. We're seeing obviously very interesting shifts and movements happening in Canada. And this is creating a big tie between Canada and America, given they're both the superpowers for cannabis as it stands. And so we're going to see a lot of capital entering from both abroad as well as within these two countries that will help the consolidation essentially bring different components of innovation for the way cannabis is grown, the way it's tested, the way that it's processed and produced into various MIP products, and on the retail level as well.
That's great. Just kind of curious, if you were going out and starting a new business today, so if you were an entrepreneur kind of getting into the space, any areas that you would focus on, either kind of specific problems or domains that you think still have some untapped potential in the cannabis space?
I would say that any type of business that you have, that your audience has seen in any other industry that offers value of some sort, can offer value in the cannabis industry. And while many technology companies have spawned in the last 4 or 5 years, there are still so many opportunities in this industry that it's hard to pinpoint one, because I think some of the more popular ones or the more obvious shots like SMS marketing, which we're obviously involved in, like point of sale systems, wholesale platforms, inventory tracking, security and delivery is a big one. There's a fair amount of competition in those different aspects, but it's interesting when you see the components of the market, the corners that maybe don't have the spotlight on them that people have not necessarily assumed would be the value add to cannabis. We have a great relationship with the company Work, WURK, and they built an HR and personnel management system for the cannabis industry that really sort of sits in that corner of the unsexy businesses that actually provide a lot of value and are needed in cannabis. And so I encourage anyone who's interested in entering the industry to not think about the obvious ones, the things that we would see on TechCrunch for restaurants, whatever, but to look at where their expertise may bring value to the cannabis space and to go for it, because there's plenty more opportunity. It's one of these areas like cryptocurrency, I think, which the market believes is late in the game, and actually we're going to find that we're all still very, very early in this space. Yeah.
I think that's similar to my answer, which is typically, you probably look at less sexy. So unsexy businesses, I think, have a lot of opportunity. And it's more about what are you passionate enough to like eat, breathe, and live for a full year, 24/7. That's probably more important than the biggest market opportunity, because you're going to have to invest everything into it to make it work. David, this has been great. If people want to find out more about Baker, find out more about you, what's the best way to get a hold of you and get more information?
Our company is Baker Technologies. Our website is trybaker.com. That's TRYBAKER. And my personal LinkedIn handle, or I should say Twitter handle, is ds_champion.
Great. I'll make sure that both of those are in the show notes so people can get those. David, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much. We will keep in touch, and I'll be curious to, we can do another episode in a couple of months post-merger here, and we can hear how things are going. But I'm excited for you. It sounds like you're doing some great work, and you've got some exciting opportunities coming up.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate the opportunity.
You've been listening to Thinking Outside the Bud with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at thinkingoutsidethebud.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at thinkingoutsidethebud.com/newsletter.